Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 GMC Acadia, we're going to be showing you how to install the etrailer.com trailer hitch receiver. Before we get into that though, why don't we just take a couple of minutes, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. One of the cool things about this setup is the fact that the hitch is going to be almost completely hidden whenever it's not in use, and that's because this panel can go back into position. And with that popped in, you can really only see the very bottom of the hitch there, and it blends in pretty good anyway, has that matte black finish. So one of the things I noticed though with this panel, which could get annoying, is when you pop this on, there's going to be two Torx bit screws that you'll have to remove to drop this down, and then obviously when you go to resecure it. If you don't use the hitch all that often, probably not a big deal, but if you're going to be doing it, using it a lot, I could see that getting annoying. So one thing you could do, it came to my mind, is you might be able to go to your hardware store and go through the specialty fastener section if they have one. You might be able to find something similar to this that might have a handle or a T-knob or something on it to make getting this off and putting it on a little bit easier. Or you don't have to use it at all. If you always have an accessory in here or something, you could just leave it off completely whenever you're using the hitch. We do get a lot of questions in regards to the hands-free liftgate assist feature, and if putting a trailer hitch on the back of the Acadia is going to interfere with that. And the answer is no. As long as you kick to either side of that receiver tube opening, the hatch will open up like it should. Compared to some of the other hitches available in terms of how they're going to look, they'll all be about the same for the most part. Sit in the same area. The panel kind of works the same and everything else. Personally, I'm kind of partial to the eTrailer one though. I like the matte black. The Curt one has more of a gloss black finish, so you got a couple of options there. Personally, I would go with this one or the Curt one over the Draw Tight, really because this is going to have some higher capacities, weight capacities, and give you a little more peace of mind if you're towing or using it for really heavy stuff. But with that said, this being a Class 3 hitch, it is going to have a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. Super common size. It'll work with a lot of different things. It is going to use the standard 5/8 pin and clip. One doesn't come with the hitch. Need it, not a big deal. You can grab it here at eTrailer, or a lot of times if you end up getting a new accessory, they'll come included with one. Just something to think about. The safety chain openings are kind of tucked back a little bit, but with the panel out of the way, you have a ton of space to get in there and use just about any size hook that your trailer might have on it. For the hitch's weight capacities, it's going to have a 750-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, which is a really high number. That's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So you'll be able to use just about any size bike rack or cargo carrier that you'd want to, for example. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating, that's going to be 5,000 pounds, or the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. That's the weight of your trailer plus anything you might have in or on it. This can be used at the weight distribution system, which is a separate component. What happens when you use that, it's going to keep your Acadia and your trailer level whenever you're towing it down the road. So really popular for campers and enclosed trailers, things like that. So if that's what you're doing, might be worth checking out. But even if you use weight distribution, tongue weight rating will be the same at 750. However, you do get some more out of the trailer side. That'll be increased to 6,000 pounds. And with that in mind, if you are going to be pulling a trailer, you want the lights to work on it, so you can always grab some trailer wiring. Super easy on these Acadias. They just plug right in here to the back. And with all that being said there, I do always like to suggest it's never a bad idea just to grab your GMC's owner's manual. That way you can check in there and make sure your SUV can handle that much weight safely. We'll go ahead, grab a couple of measurements. These will help us figure out what type of accessories will work best. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, it's going to be about 16.5 inches. So if you're pulling a trailer, you can probably get away with using a ball mount that has a straight shank. Or if you're using an accessory, straight shank or a raised shank will work fine. Either one. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 6 inches, and you can use that to help figure out that if any folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Acadia. So at the end of the day, this would be the hitch that I'd go with. I think it looks the best, and with those high capacities, it's going to get the job done. In terms of the installation, It's really not complicated per se, just with these Acadias, you know, you don't have a ton of space to work. Everything's kind of tight in there. And I'd say what a lot of people run into, there's some sealer on the frame rail where the hitch is gonna sit up. Make sure all that's cleaned off and cleared out real good. That way you don't have any interference. And the hitch will kind of bolt up there like you'd expect it to. So that's my advice, but if you'd like to hang around, feel free to. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage and put the hitch on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Acadia, and we are going to need to let the exhaust come down a little bit and give us some extra room to work. So before we lower it, I like to take a strap, just run it from side to side. That way the exhaust will have a little bit of support, and we can kind of control how fast and how far we let it come down. At the back of our vehicle by our tailpipe, there's going to be an exhaust hanger bracket, and that's held in place with two 15mm head bolts. So we'll go ahead and pull them out. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll also do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. If you continue to follow the exhaust piping towards the front of the vehicle, you're going to run into a rubber isolator hanger like this one. We're going to remove it to really let the exhaust down and give us extra space. So I sprayed it down with some soapy water, some type of lubricant, and you can take a pry bar or big screwdriver and work one end of that hanger off. With all those removed now, you can loosen up the strap and let the exhaust come down a little bit. We can get our heat shields removed. So these are going to be held in place with 4 speed nuts, which look just like this. To get these off, you can take a pair of needle nose pliers, just kind of lightly grab it and rotate it. And usually once you get them to kind of break loose, they'll spin right off. So I'll do the same thing to get the other 3 off. With the speed nuts removed, you can then kind of pull down on the heat shield to get it out from under the vehicle, and we can get this trimmed out. Trim our heat shield, that way it doesn't interfere with the hitch. Refer to the diagram and the instructions, except on ours, just kind of eyeballing it under the vehicle. I didn't go back quite as far. I'm going to try to save this spot to bolt this up. Looks like we'll clear. If not a big deal. We'll come back and trim around it. But with that said, I'm just using a pair of 10 snips, and we'll get this material removed. On the bottom of our frame rail, we're going to have this bead of sealer here that is going to interfere with the hitch, so we're going to scrape that off. I'm just using a scraper. But being that there's not a whole lot of this, you know, a flathead screwdriver, whatever you got will work fine here. It's going to be this little stud here that comes down too, that'll be in the way of the hitch. So you can use a Dremel tool and cut this off, or if you don't have one, just take a pair of pliers and kind of work this around until it pops off. Reinstall the heat shield the opposite way that you removed it, really with one exception where we removed that stud. You know, obviously we don't have a place to mount up a bolt there anymore or a nut. We can get our hardware in the frame rail now. All of it's going to be the same for all of our attachment points, and we're going to have 3 attachment points on each side. We're going to use this hole, this one, and this one will be used as an access hole. Take the coiled end of your pull wire, and starting back here towards the very back of our vehicle, you're going to push that through. We're trying to get that coiled end to drop out of the access hole there. Sometimes you'll get lucky. A lot of the other times though, you'll just have to kind of reach up there and grab it and And pull it down, put on a spacer block and a carriage bolt. It's going to thread onto that pull wire. Then you can feed the hardware up into the frame, pull down until the bolt passes through. And I'm going to use that same technique and hardware for the other two attachment points. What I did was just remove some of this sealer, and hopefully that'll give us the space that we need to get our hitch up here a little bit easier. Remove this center panel here. So on each side of it, there's a T15 Torx bit screw. We'll pull them out and this should just pop right out of position. Now with an extra set of hands, we can take our hitch, raise it into position. So you're going to want to drop down the pull wires through the holes in the hitch. So we'll raise it up. With these, you have to kind of tilt it inward a little bit just to kind of get it to clear the weld nuts there on the exhaust, where our exhaust brackets are. And it's a really tight fit, so get all your bolts lined up and then remove one of the pull wires. You're going to take a flange nut and we want to get at least one started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself. With one of them started on each side, I removed the pull wires, and since the hitch is kind of wanting to hang down, there's not a ton of threads exposed on these bolts. So what I'm going to do is tighten this one up with an 11/16. And that kind of drew the hitch up, giving us a lot more threads there on the bolts. And then you can get the other flange nuts started. And I want to point out too, if you're having a hard time getting the bolt started or getting the nut started because the bolt wants to push up, you take a small flathead screwdriver and just apply some side pressure to it, and that makes it much more manageable. Get them started. And now that we have all of them in place there, I'll snug these up as well. You need to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and torque down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. At this point, you can go ahead, raise your exhaust back into position and re-secure it the opposite way that we removed it. For the hanger in the middle, you can just re-lubricate it and then push it back in place by hand. And once the exhaust is supporting itself, we'll remove our strap. Grab that little door that we removed, get it trimmed out, that way we can reinstall it. So diagram and the instructions, I just taped it out and measured it up, and then you can kind of hold this against the vehicle too and eyeball where you need to cut. I'm going to use a multi-tool to trim this out. 10 snips would work, utility knife, Dremel tool, kind of whatever you got. But either way, we'll go ahead and get this done. With the panel trimmed, if you're not going to be using the hitch for a while, you can always just reinstall that opposite way that you removed it. Or if you're going to be using it right away, leave the panel off, entirely up to you. And what I've seen people do as well is actually continue to cut this out a little bit. That way you can have the panel on and still use the hitch. Definitely up to you what you'd like to do. To me, with this particular setup, cutting that out would kind of look a little off, but that's just my opinion. So we're going to leave it like this, and since we're going to be using ours soon, we'll keep our panel off. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com trailer hitch receiver on our 2023 GMC Acadia.